No Kuni II: Revenant Kingdom was one of my most anticipated games this year. It was a game that I was really looking forward to for the fact alone that I loved the first one so much. I would go as far to put the first one on my list of top 10 games. And that's... So I had a lot riding on No Kuni II: Revenant Kingdom, and I'm sad to report that this game just did not live up to what I was expecting. Now I want to get in and talk about a chunk of Ni no Kuni and ultimately some of the good that it does and some of the bad. This is my official review of Ni no Kuni. I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers in this review. I am sorry, but this is my opinion and nothing is going to change it. So first and foremost, I want to talk about the story of Ni no Kuni II. Right at the beginning of the game, we are whisked into the world of Ni no Kuni as the president of, I'm assuming what is Earth, is driving down the road, a bomb hits, or explosion hits, it explodes, he's knocked unconscious and is taken into the world of Ni no Kuni II. And this is where he meets up with the young Prince Evan. Evan is a young boy whose kingdom is being taken over at the moment that Roland arrives from the rat folk led by his father's past visor, Mousinger. Now, Roland functions as a diplomat, he's a president, so he kind of knows what's up with running a country. This becomes very apparent through the game's story as he helps Evan kind of grow his new kingdom evermore, which is pretty much what the story is about. Rather than going in and trying to take back Ding Dong Dell, which is what you'd kind of expect them to do, Evan instead decides to build his own kingdom and make his own nation. It is here that they also decide that they are going to travel around the world, take the 5 kingdoms, and unite them as one massive nation. And this is kind of Evan's goal. So they go off on this adventure to have the other peace treaties signed so these nations can be there. Now there is a nefarious bit of a plot going on here. A man named Dolaron is going around stealing the kingmakers from the rulers across the world of Ni no Kuni. Kingmakers are basically what make people. They're the monsters or guardian spirits basically that the kings are able to bond with, and this is kind of what makes them kings of their rightful kingdom. The art design in this game is absolutely fantastic. I do want to say that the creature design I thought was really, really good. It's the monster designs are very weak compared to the first one. I think a lot more effort kind of went into the first one as well. And we're going to get more into that here in just a little bit. But I do just want to finish out with the story saying if the story really doesn't go anywhere special. It is a very generic story. The characters are generic. I could take a checklist of top 10 or just character cliches in JRPGs, and I could make a checklist on just about every single one of those characters fulfilling that particular role, which is sad because Ni no Kuni, the original Ni no Kuni, had such an amazing cast of characters. And the story, though it does have emotional moments, they're not as impactful as the first one. The game really doesn't give you time to soak in the emotional feel that you're feeling. Evan just lost his father, his kingdom, but the game doesn't deliver the impact that it had on Evan as much as it did with Oliver, and I think that was his biggest problem, is it didn't give you time to connect and relate to the characters, just kind of pushes you on through this narrative and rushes you through the game. Let's go ahead and get into its gameplay, because its gameplay, it really tries to be 3 different games at once, and it really doesn't succeed very well at either of them. On one hand, you have a very generic, action-based battle system that does throw in quite a bit of, which is not a problem. I would say it works very well, and I actually enjoyed the battle system quite a bit more than I did the original. So I'm not saying generic in a bad way, because it's not. Now, what that does differently is it does have the Higgledies. The Higgledies are these little creatures, these little elemental spirits, that help you out in battle. So you may have one group of enemies, you may have a group of enemies that you're fighting. They may overpower you. You can use one of the higgledies to summon a circle to heal you, and this will, of course, as long as all your party members are in there, make them heal. You're also able to deal elemental attacks, different things. And if each group of the higgledies has something special to offer, and it's just something you're going to have to get in there and really play around with yourself. It's very interesting in that aspect. The game also has tactic tweakers, which kind of allow you to increase the strength that you do, maybe up your defense, choose whether or not you want to receive more EXP or more gold at this point, so that's definitely a nice touch right there. I do feel the game is a bit too easy, though. That is my biggest problem with this game. The first one, you could adjust the difficulty, so it really gave it a little bit of a distinctive edge on there, and this one just kind of feels like they made this game for more casuals. Let's go ahead and talk about the kingdom building mechanic, because while this works, it makes sense for the story and what the story's going for, it just kind of feels like it was added in there to pad out the game. It doesn't really add anything to the game. Most of the items you can get in your weapon shop and your armory in the beginning stages of the game really don't do you any good. Even propelling through the story, you're still consistently getting better weapons and drops from just fighting battles and opening chests than you actually are what you can construct in your kingdom. So word of advice, I would highly recommend that you actually work on maybe going in, doubling down on your resources of mining materials or your fish market or other things rather than focusing on your weapon and armory. So there's definitely that to contend with. Now the kingdom building aspect of the game, it works well. It's very simplified. So you just basically click on the space, you build the kingdom, that building pops up. You're able to go in and put your citizens into specific categories, like you put one in the armory, say, or you can put one in the blacksmith. Certain characters are going to be able to be more suitable for that particular area. So say you have someone who excels in blacksmithing, obviously you're going to want to put them in the weaponry because that's going to increase the productivity that that character's able to do. And the game will also tell you who's suitable. Though characters may not also be suitable, they may work very well for that. And so in order to research something, you have to have a specific IQ, which means you have to have enough citizens in there to raise that level to raise that particular building to that specific IQ level so you can research something. So the game actually lists from top to bottom who has the strongest and who has the lowest, so you don't have to sit there and jumble through a bunch of citizens to go about doing that. It definitely does. It's a nice touch. One of the major complaints I have about the kingdom building aspect of it, though, is going through and doing side quests and continuing through the main story. Now, side quests you actually have to use to get citizens to into your kingdom, so you can add them in there to do more work for your kingdom. That's not the problem here. The problem I have is really when it comes down to the coffers. The coffers are basically how you get money to construct new buildings for your kingdoms through king guilders. King guilders is what allows you to do your research, what allows you to build buildings, what allows you to upgrade buildings, what allows you to ultimately upgrade your kingdom, raise your influence with your citizens. Therefore, you're able to construct higher buildings, things like that. It all fits into that, to how about building up your kingdom. But the problem I have is when you start off, your coffer starts at 5,000. You can upgrade that to more and more as time goes by, upgrading to what your coffers will bring in. But here's the problem that I continuously had. I was running through a side quest or going through a dungeon or progressing through the game, and I would get stuck in this long section that I would just have to finish up. And I didn't really want to. I guess you could just leave and go back at that point, but subconsciously you don't think about it because you're so focused on the story that you're not constantly thinking to go back to your kingdom. Or you don't always want to go back to your kingdom because you're trying to get more resources to do something, and you don't want to mess that up and kind of restart over. So once your coffers hits a certain limit, your guilders reaches a certain limit, you're able to go in and collect that. But say, starting out, it starts at 5,000. Meaning once it hits 5,000, that's where it caps out. Meaning however long you are in the dungeon past when it hits 5,000, you're not collecting any gold. And this is kind of a problem, because gold's kind of tedious to get. And it's not like you can just freeze your game or whatever and it, gives you gold as you go through, which does actually add a bit of enjoyment there. I just wish they would have put in a tag in the menu to give us that option to be able to manage our kingdom in a dungeon. It would have just been a nice touch and made things a lot more easier. In the end, the building mechanic really doesn't add anything to the game, but it doesn't take away from it either. It just more or less feels like it was put in there as extra padding to make it so they didn't have to put as much effort on the story. And that's what I honestly feel about it. The next bit of gameplay that I want to talk about is the RTS elements. The RTS elements is ultimately just kind of what kills it for me. And it's not that they're not inherently bad the way that they're executed, they just feel so out of place. They feel like they don't really have a rhyme or reason to be there. I always felt going through the game that I needed to, that I just wanted, whenever that came up a section or a skirmish for a side quest or continuing through the story that I had to do, I always felt just let me go in there and kill them in normal battle. I can overpower them at this point. And I guess it does kind of add a bit more strategy, but it just took me out of the immersiveness of the game, and it really had no rhyme or reason to be there. The game makes you grind for your levels for regular battle and grind for your levels in skirmishes. They're not shared. And that, to me, just made it even more frustrating. On top of building your kingdom, on top of getting resources to do that, on top of leveling up your characters regularly, on top of going through the skirmishes, it all became a bit too much. I am one who enjoys grinding, but to the point of how much grinding and how much focus that this game puts on the building aspects of the game, it's just not a game for me. And it's ultimately sad for me to say that, because I did love the original Ni no Kuni. It was rich in story, rich in lore. It's one of the best stories I think I've ever come across in a video game. I was so emotionally connected to each and every one of the characters and what was going on in that world. And Ni no Kuni II is just a mediocre mess. It's not bad, but it's not great. It does not live up to the first one, and I feel like they tried so hard to make this a game so different that they forgot to kind of go in and make what was so good. It lost a lot of the magic that the first one had. The Studio Ghibli magic in this is gone. It has the art style of Studio Ghibli, the graphics of Studio Ghibli, but it does not feel like anything Studio Ghibli other than its art style. And you need a game with more substance if you're going to go in and present an art style that's great in order to you can't just have a pretty outer shell with no real innards to keep it going. Ni no Kuni II was just a big disappointment for me, and I absolutely just can't really recommend this game to anybody. Let's go ahead and give it a big score. And so I'm going to give Ni no Kuni II Revenant Kingdom a 6 out of 10. Ultimately, this game just tries to be too many different things all at once. Its characters and story aren't really interesting enough to keep you compelled through the hours of grinding that you're going to be going through to go in and play this game, and it ultimately failed to impress me. This is a game that cannot live up to its predecessor. It definitely hits that sophomore slump. And at this point, I want to see a Ni no Kuni 3, but I want to see them go back to the cores and fundamentals of what made the other one so great, and just keep out so many of the different mechanics and focus in on what made that great, being a great RPG rather than a kingdom builder and a tower defense, and being padded out so the game can just be prolonged at this point. So this is my thoughts, my opinions on Ni no Kuni II, A Revenant Kingdom. take it for what it's worth. It's a game personally, I can't invest any more time into. I'm absolutely done with the game. And it's a shame. This is one of the most disappointing titles that I have played in a very, very long time. You guys have been watching Gaming with Spoons. This has been my official review of No Kuni II. Let me know down below what you guys think about No Kuni II. Let me know if you are enjoying it, because ultimately that's what matters, and I'm glad there are people out there being able to go in and enjoy this game. It just was not something for me. Be sure to hit subscribe there for me to keep updated with all of my content. You can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are going to be down below in that description box. Remember, guys, most importantly, stay happy, be happy, game happy. Spoons is checking out.